Lurkers explores the dark side of the online world. It contains adult themes and disturbing content for mature audiences only.
It's a weekday in Galena, Illinois, the kind of small town where routines don't change much, and when they do, people notice. Somewhere else, Kelly Gao is living her normal life when her phone lights up with a voicemail from a federal agent. The message isn't vague, it isn't a tip, it's specific enough to make your throat go dry. I am calling in regards to your mother, Laura Kowal, who may have been involved in a fraud scam. Kelly doesn't sit with it. She calls her mom immediately. Laura answers, and for a moment, Kelly gets the strangest version of relief. Because her mother is alive, her voice is there, but it doesn't sound right. Laura is scattered, distant, like she's already handling something she doesn't want to explain. She tells Kelly to forward the voicemail. She'll take care of it. Everything will be fine. Then the line goes dead, and Kelly gets that feeling, the one you can't prove, the one that doesn't come with facts, just certainty. She gets in her car and starts driving to Galena. On the way, she calls Laura's neighbor, Kathy, because Laura had lunch plans that day with her. But Kathy says Laura canceled just 10 minutes before. Kathy had also overheard Laura in her driveway, on the phone, telling somebody she was supposed to meet Kathy for lunch, and then Laura drove off. So now Kelly has two questions. Where did her mother go? And who was she talking to? Because it wasn't her. Kelly then goes and enters Laura's home. The air inside feels untouched, like Laura just stepped out for a minute. Kelly calls the police. And then she sees something that makes her pause. Laura's dog, Effie, is still there, lying on the couch, waiting. Her mother doesn't leave ever without Effie. So Kelly starts searching, fast, desperate, pulling open drawers, checking rooms, turning the house inside out. And that's when she finds it. A note. And by the second sentence, Kelly realizes her worst fear is already in motion. In a world where connection is effortless, every click feels safe. But online, trust can be deceiving. This is Lurkers, true stories of trust, desire, and how technology, if unchecked, can turn it all against us. Hey you, how are you doing? Before we start, really quick, if you're enjoying Lurkers, hit follow wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's next. And if your app lets you leave a rating or a quick review, that's one of the biggest ways you can help this show grow. It tells the platforms a story is worth sharing, and it helps these episodes reach people who might actually need to hear them. So thank you. Alright, let's get into it. It's Galena, Illinois, Friday, August 7th, 2020. A postcard town. Historic streets, neat storefronts, weekend tourists. The kind of place people choose on purpose when they want things to slow down. And Laura Kowal did choose it, not because she was running, because she was rebuilding, and when people rebuild, there's a window, not a weakness, a window. And online, there are people who know exactly how to spot it. Inside Laura's house, there was a rhythm to the day. Lived in, a retired hospital executive. Earned, Effie, always close, always there. And Laura, she had spent most of her life taking care of things, not sentimentally, practically. She built a career, raised 2 kids, kept life steady, until life stopped being steady. You see, so you can understand a little bit better. Years earlier, Laura's husband died after battling cancer, and grief doesn't always show up like tears. Sometimes it shows up like silence, like a house that feels too big. Many of you probably feel the same way, or possibly have a grandparent who feels exactly how Laura did. So Laura kept moving, retired, relocated, chose a slower town, a place that looked peaceful enough to start again. And if you were her daughter, Callie, you would see your mom trying. You would think, okay, maybe she's going to be all right. Just like Kelly did. Because Laura wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She was careful, responsible, the kind of person who didn't fall for things. But loneliness doesn't announce itself. It just shows up and stays. And eventually, it starts asking one question you don't want to answer. Do I really want the rest of my life to feel this quiet? Yes, many of you are probably thinking, I have no problem with this, because you're probably getting ahead of the story. But the thing is, many of us, most of us, don't like loneliness. And what an irony. Online dating has a promise baked into it. Control, distance, a sense of safety. You can step towards someone without stepping all the way in. And scammers love that feeling. Because control is what people reach for when life feels out of control. So Laura signed up for Match.com. A photo, a few lines about who she was, a few lines about what she wanted, and maybe, without realizing it, she was writing the part of herself she missed. And then, a message arrived from a man calling himself Frank Borg. Not a stranger in the dark, just words on a screen that felt specific enough to be real. This is a part where you might be thinking, okay, here it comes, the part where the guard drops. Well, yes. And no, don't get comfortable. Evil is creative. Evil adapts. It never feels like danger at first. It feels like hope. And none of our voids are the same. What doesn't manipulate your best friend could very easily manipulate you. And in the beginning, Frank didn't ask for money. He didn't threaten. He didn't shove. He just stepped closer the way predators do now. One notification at a time. And in Galena, in that quiet house, with Effie nearby, Laura typed back. At first, he was just a name, a profile, a message that arrived at the right time when the house was quiet and the hours felt longer than they used to. And then the name became a presence, a routine, a voice that seemed to know exactly what to say and when to say it. And his name was Frank Borg. He presented himself as international, successful, always just out of reach for justifiable reasons, a Swedish investment advisor working overseas in Europe. Yep, distance was baked right into the story. Convenient distance, the kind that explained why he couldn't meet for coffee, why everything had to live on a screen. And you see, distance is a feature, not a flaw. It protects the lie. It keeps the fantasy clean. And what began as a message turned into a flood. Florid emails, long notes, constant contact, the kind of attention that doesn't just flatter you, it rebuilds you. And it wasn't just a handful. Over the course of the next couple of years, it became hundreds of emails, a constant thread that kept pulling her back in. Because he didn't talk like someone getting to know you. He talked like someone who had already decided who you were to him. And the calls. Oh yes, let's not forget about the calls. Later, Kelly would describe her mother as giddy, swept up in that early rush where everything feels possible again, where your phone stops being a device and starts feeling like a doorway. And guys, here's the part that matters, the part you should remember, because it wasn't months, it wasn't even weeks, it was days. Love bombing isn't romance, it's acceleration. It's getting you attached before you have time to verify. As Kelly recalled in the CBS Reports episode, Anything for Love, inside the Roman scam epidemic, it took just 12 days to go from, "Hi, I'm Laura," to "Love you, Frank." 12 days. Don't focus on Laura. Picture what Frank was saying. That's not a relationship. That's a landing, a controlled descent into something that feels like love. Because love is the easiest word to recognize and the easiest word to weaponize. Laura's world narrowed gradually, less attention on everything else, more attention on the screen, because the screen kept rewarding her attention, affection, certainty. And when you've been living with absence long enough, certainty feels like oxygen. Frank Borg became routine. Morning messages, night calls, promises that sounded like plans, a structure. And then, without a warning, the tone shifted. Not enough to scare her off, just enough to test her. He started giving her steps, and Laura didn't recognize that hinge as a trap. Not yet. And then the relationship stopped sounding like love and started sounding like a plan. By the time Laura said, "Love you, Frank," Frank already had the next move ready. Not flowers, not a plane ticket, a future. But not the kind of future we dream of. He told her he could help her build security, build independence, build a life that didn't feel like it was shrinking. And then he sent her the link, a platform, a company name that sounded crisp and legitimate. Goose Investments. Oh yes, it looked real. A login, a dashboard, numbers that moved like proof. And yes, he even sent her an investor certificate, because once you can see the return, your brain stops asking if it's real. It starts asking, what does it take to get more? So, the first transfers were framed like opportunity, a deposit, a test, a way to prove she was ready. Another, and then another. And soon it wasn't casual anymore. It was wire transfers, opening bank accounts, creating fake corporations, and even set up phony dating profiles. Laura adjusted her reality to match the story. She pulled money from places you don't touch unless you believe you're doing it for a reason. And according to CBS reporting, her daughter Kelly would later discover in her mother's financial records that over nearly 2 years, Frank convinced Laura to send him above $1.5 million. It just feels like needles piercing behind my retinas, just telling you about this. And let me tell you, Laura felt it. In May of 2019, she pushed back, writing that she was quote-unquote struggling, and that Frank and quote-unquote these strangers seemed to know more about her than she knew about them. Laura was being pulled closer to the machinery of it, step by step, whether she understood what she was stepping into or not. Because the most dangerous part wasn't what Frank was taking from her. It was what he started turning her into. Before we can understand what was really happening to Laura, who Frank was shaping her into, we have to jump ahead. Because the first time the truth stopped being a feeling for Kelly and started becoming a fact was when she walked into her mother's house and found the dreadful note you heard about at the beginning of this episode. As per the CBS Reports episode titled Anything for Love Inside the Roman Scam Epidemic, it started with one word: Kelly. So Kelly read it once, and then again, because your brain does that when it doesn't want to accept what it's seeing. It said, quote, "You have kept me going this long. I love you. You were right in your judgment of me. I've been living a double life this past year, and it has left me broke and broken. Yes, it involves Frank. I tried to stop this many times, but I knew I would end up dead. Love you, Mom." End quote. Everything in Kelly's being wanted to freeze, but she didn't have the luxury of processing it slowly because the note felt like a warning. So once the police arrived, she had to tell them. And now, officially, Laura Kowal was missing. Where had she gone? But while patrol cars moved through Galena, the real chase was already happening somewhere else, through screens, through emails, through accounts, because the note didn't just name the fear, it named the cause: Frank. And here's where the story twisted. Frank was never just a man. He was a role, a mask. And masks don't work alone. Federal agents were able to trace her emails from Frank, not to Sweden, but in the West African nation of Ghana, nearby Nigeria, where most of these scams originate. But this is not new for you, at least if you're an old listener. Here's what's new. Law enforcement said Laura Kowal had become a money mule. That term sounds almost harmless until you understand what it means. Once scammers empty a victim's accounts, they don't always stop. They force the victim into becoming part of the system, moving money, opening pathways, doing tasks that leave fingerprints. And once your fingerprints are on something, fear gets stronger, because now you're not just scared of the scammers, you're scared of what you'll look like if you tell anyone. And even worse, the legal consequences you could be facing. 'Cause as many of us know, Intent does very little to change the outcome under the law, and the scammers who have evolved know this, and that's the cage. They use victims till the end by making them coerced co-conspirators. Oh, and just in case I forgot, when investigators kept tracing the trail to Ghana, it became clear that the picture used for Frank had been stolen from a doctor in Chile. And to make matters even worse, while the operation ran out of Ghana, parts of the money trail ran right here in the US. In a press release from the US Attorney's Office from the Northern District of Illinois, prosecutors announced that 3 Chicago area residents were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, including a US citizen from Oak Park. She was a US postal worker who, unbeknownst to her, or at least that's what she said, had been manipulated to keep moving Laura's money by a so-called online lover. So, you can see the extent of manipulation and control. A machinery with steps. Victims become just one of the many gears in their clock. As you can see, this story isn't just about a woman who fell for a scam. It was bigger than that. A network, a pipeline, and Laura, at the center of it, had tried to pull out and believed she couldn't. Which brings us back to the only fact that mattered to Kelly in that moment. Her mother was missing, and the note was telling her this wasn't just emotional, it was dangerous. Kelly later said that once Sunday arrived, she felt it. That shift. That feeling when you've waited too long. When silence starts to sound like an answer. Then the call came. Not from Frank. From detectives.
Hello,
they asked Kelly to prepare herself for what they were about to say. And then they delivered the sentence that cuts a life in half. 2 days after she disappeared, Laura's body had been found. After that, everything became reconstruction because grief doesn't stop questions, and Kelly needed the how, even if she would never get the why. As reported by local outlets like KWQC, investigators reconstructed the trail the best way they could. Cell tower pings, timelines, the slow stitching together of a route. And Kelly did her own stitching too, tracking down surveillance video from a gas station, trying to see what her mother's last day looked like in real time. In their findings, Laura's car was moving away from Galena, heading down Route 84 south, spotted passing through Hanover, and her phone's last ping hit a tower in Sebula, Iowa. Then her car was found in Warsaw, Illinois. But the part that haunted Kelly the most was where they found her. In the Mississippi River, near Canton, Missouri, about 250 miles from home. A place Kelly said her mother had never been. Then comes the line that rarely feels like closure. The medical examiner ruled Laura's death as drowning, not a suicide, and not a homicide. Kelly still believes her mother was killed, and in this CBS episode, you can hear and feel her anger, because to Kelly, they didn't just take money, they took time, they took her mother's life, then left the family with a trail of locations instead of answers. Okay, my friends. Now, let's zoom out. Because this is a part that people miss when they hear Roman scam and they picture a lonely person clicking a bad link. Just so you can understand the scale, this isn't about Laura alone. According to DOJ Deputy Assistant Attorney Arun Rao, losses surged from around 500 million in 2019 to well over $1 billion just a few years later. The FTC estimates more than 64,000 reports in 2023, and even that is likely undercounted because shame keeps a lot of the rest quiet. And that's why Frank, quote-unquote, matters, not as a name, but as a method, a persona designed to do one thing: get close enough to drain you, and then close enough to use you. Laura wasn't only a victim of fraud, she was coerced into becoming a tool inside it, a victim pushed toward meal work, because once you're pulled in deep enough, the scam doesn't need romance anymore. It needs leverage. And this is the link to what we've talked about before on Lurkers in Season 1, Episode 10, The Hugh Wine Crypto Roman Scam. We explore this same system from the other side, how a perpetrator can also be a victim inside that bigger structure in the other side of the world. But in today's case, Laura's story flipped the lens. She started as the target and then got pushed into the machinery, coerced into moving money, carrying risk, and living in fear. Same mechanism, a different perspective. A system that doesn't just steal money, it consumes people from the inside out. So when you finish this story, go ahead and hit play on that episode 2 and tell me what you think. Lastly, Laura didn't get the ending she deserved. None of them did. But Kelly refused to let her mother's story disappear into paperwork and headlines. She's dedicated her life to help other victims of Roman scams because she knows what's on the other side of the shame and how fast online can become real. And now, as she's building a family of her own, she carries one truth with her. One day her daughter will know who Laura was and what happened to her, not as a secret, not as a warning whispered in a hallway, but as a story with purpose. Because if Laura Kowal's life is remembered for anything, let it be this: her story can still save someone else. Remember Laura Kowal. Remember, these scams don't start with danger, they start with hope. A system that turns your voids into profit by turning hope into secrecy and secrecy into control. Stay aware, stay present, stay safe. Before you go, don't forget, if one person came to mind during this episode, send it to them and hit follow so you don't miss the next case. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, something that really helps us is a quick rating. It puts Lurkers in front of more people. Seriously, thank you for being part of this. This episode of Lurkers was written and developed by me, Frank Battiston. Research by Christy Bowman. Production and sound design by Daniel Erdenivia. Thank you for listening. If this story shook you to your core, like it did us, share it with someone you love and tell them why. Your ratings and reviews help others discover these stories, and every share helps keep their voices alive. Follow Lurkers on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you'll be here for the next one. Thank you for listening.